What were the subtle signs your ex so showed while cheating? She started encouraging me to go out without her more often. Never did that before. Couldn't stand to be apart from me. In retrospect, there were a lot of things, but I didn't notice any of them. Meanwhile, she was basically in a year-long relationship with one of my best friends and I was oblivious. Ouch. I was getting accused of being sneaky. There was suddenly an interest in who I was texting and where I was going. She was projecting her dishonesty onto me. Yeah, same here. He would constantly accuse me of talking to or flirting with other men. I always heard that people who are guilty of cheating often project their guilt outwards like that, but I guess I didn't want to believe it. Got a new phone and changed his number. When I asked for the number, he said I couldn't have T because it was his personal phone. LOL, what's more personal than his so? I live in the Phoenix metro. During the summer you'll have to be daft to go outside for an extended period of time when it is over 100 degrees. When my ex was cheating, she'd go outside and talk to her friend on her cell. In July. Actually, that's not terribly subtle, now that I think of it. I'm not on great terms with my family, so I suggested making a roast chicken for the two of us for Thanksgiving. She opted to go to her roommate's family's place. The roommate who I learned she was freaking shortly afterwards. I feel like you were the other guy. The way they said their name in casual conversation, and then the frequency, and then suddenly they disappear from conversation. This cycle can repeat itself. Two different partners. This was my first clue. Warning bells went off. I was right each time. He suddenly became concerned about his looks but didn't want me to look good. Went on a diet, started wearing contacts, and started shaving his pubes, which he wouldn't do for me. Also became distant, lack of interest in sex, spent a lot of time on his phone, had weird mood swings that didn't relate to our relationship, fights, makeups, lots of other signs. I know there are lots of things going on here, but I think I'd be all kinds of pee about the pubes thing. Like, oh, okay, you'll shave your pubes but just not for me. Well then, you and your smooth, shiny balls can just gtfo. Does she keep her phone locked around you? Michael, does she watch how much she drinks around you? Michael, does she leave the room when she takes phone calls? Does she keep perfume in her purse? Does she shower before sex? Does she shower after sex? Run the office. He started including really specific things in his stories to make them seem more realistic. For example, I was at the store with my mom and we were in the paper towel aisle. They didn't make it more realistic, just made me believe him less. Having adult ADHD is sometimes difficult for this very reason, even if you are 100% truthful. He lost interest, didn't want to do anything romantic and was more like a friend than anything. Yet, the second I tried to leave the relationship, he acted like his entire existence was inside of me and he was desperate to keep it around. Dang, this is exactly what I went through but didn't even realize. After having a long abusive relationship with a multiple confirmed cheating girl, I can tell she didn't go to events or parties with me that were public. Her not telling anyone about her being in a relationship, or even worse, hearing wait, you are still together? I thought you broke up from a mutual friend. When picking her up from parties she didn't want to go together, she would be coming from another direction than from the place the party was at. Her not being okay with unannounced visits from me. Other random bulls that doesn't make any sense. Sounds like you were the side piece. He started working out more, shaved all his body hair off, hid his phone, had random outburst of laughter while looking at his phone, use a random address for everything instead of your actual home address, send flowers to a house you don't know, take random holiday without you, money goes missing, goes out more with, holy crap, that could almost be me, turning 40 this year and I've committed to getting fit, planning on waxing my chest and back hair once I've lost the weight, use work address for deliveries, send flowers to friends' houses on occasion, going on holidays with my buddies, excuse me, I need to call my wife. Getting really defensive when asked about their day. I ask questions because I'm interested in what's going on in their life, but when the answers don't make sense I ask more questions because I figured I was misunderstanding. overreacting to something completely unexpected. For example, my ex lived in a house with her grandparents for years and never visited a pretty large mall down the street. I said, really? That's unbelievable, thinking I just found a place to take her to. A couple minutes later, out of the blue, she says, I'm not lying to you. Was and so for 5 years, going 6. It was the new year of 2014. When everything was going well, he suddenly asked for space. I asked if he wanted a day or a week. He said he wanted a month. I gave him that, as in zero bothering. February came. We met and he called it quits, and though it saddened me, it gave me time to improve on myself and reflect. It was mid-March, and just when I was able to get my life back together, he contacted me again. He told me he wanted me back. I was elated and hopeful. He said that there is just one condition that he wanted to compromise on to show that I had changed, and that is to limit my questions of his whereabouts and limit my calls to him to just his lunchtime. Realizing that I might have gone overboard with calls and questions when I was with him, he was on a night shift in a particularly shady environment, and it didn't help that I was a worrywart. I agreed, but there was something in my gut that tells me something doesn't seem fair. Since then, I fought the urge to even simply ask him how his day was, or make any leisurely talk with him just to comply and prove to myself and to him that I don't have trust issues, because if I don't, he'll call it out on me. Then, in November of that year, his friend from his workplace died. I was scared because I hadn't heard from him for almost 2 days during the funeral, and I am worried that he might be devastated. My worry turned to anger when he just said that he placed his phone on silent mode, spent the night with his mates in the funeral, and told me, I have to ignore you since the funeral was the only time I can talk to my workplace friends and you disturb me a lot. I apologized for my anger and just let him be. I still have to prove to him that I am not bothersome. We became okay afterwards. It wasn't a big fight, but I was quite offended by what he just said. I was just worried because it was not typical of him to not inform me of his whereabouts. 3 weeks after the funeral, he just dropped the "I'm breaking up with you for good." No warnings. I was beyond devastated. Fast forward 2015. He came back one midnight, asking for me to leave my BF, now husband, crying and regretting that he dismissed all my concern and my thoughtfulness when we were together. Funny thing is, he had a GF when he begged me to get back together, and that GF is the one who he cheated me with. He told me that his GF hated it when he gets concerned, thoughtful or sweet, and that he misses me who appreciates all that. I dismissed him with, "You'll find yourself a good woman eventually." People, remember that sufficient proximity and proper communication are indispensable in a good relationship. If your so keeps on asking for too much space, he might as well be on the next rocket ship out of your life. Dang, that is one abusive person. If you feel like you're walking on eggshells around someone, it's time to get out. I have never had to confirm that my ex was cheating on me, but I'm 95% sure he was. He never allowed me to touch his phone. Like, even if he needed it, I wasn't allowed to pass it to him. Similarly, when he got a text message from anyone, the text didn't show up on the screen as a preview, it was just the notification. We weren't friends on Facebook until we had dated for 2 years. Yes, I know this is weird looking back, but at the time it was normal. He was very secretive about who he was meeting up with. He would never refer to them by name but just as his friends. I was never introduced to said friends. I once went to visit him and he had a pair of earrings and a leather jacket in his room. After we split up, about a month or so later, he was in a relationship with someone else. It was all over Facebook and they went on holiday together. Sorry about any formatting issues. I'm on mobile. Hiding his phone, putting a password on it, then blocking me from being able to see or comment on his profile, deleting comments I made, untagging himself in stuff with me. Sounds like he was cheating with you. When I got home from work, she would be going into work and I would be hanging out with our baby. Around the time he was 1.5, she started going to the bar with co-workers. I was fine with it because it wasn't often, maybe one night a week. She came back home by 12. It quickly got up to coming home between 2:30 4 am. S-faced, 4-6 times a week. She started mentioning this one coworker a lot and how cool he was. My paranoia got the better of me and I checked her phone one alcohol-induced coma night and she had been trying to get said coworker to meet with her at an abandoned gas station a few miles up the road while she was on her way out. I approached her and asked what she planned to do when he showed up. Just hang out and shoot the crap, to which I replied, well, you're drunk. At 2 AM. Behind an abandoned gas station. She never admitted to it, but that. A lot of not even subtle clues, and people I knew seeing her out at the bar gave me all I needed. That sucks. I hope you and your son are good without her. Telling me lots and lots and lots about Scott from my building whenever we would speak on the phone. Long distance relationship. Frick you, Scott. Frick you, Scott. Looks like she beat you to it. Got angry when I asked her rather mundane questions. How was work today? It was freaking fine. Jeez, what's with all the questions? Disappearing for hours at a time. Snowmobiling with friends. Yeah, they're guys, but I don't like them. Yeah, they both ask me for nudes all the time. I always say number, can't believe I didn't see the billion red flags sooner. Maybe it's not that you didn't see the red flags, but that you didn't want to see them. I know how that is, because I'm the queen of denial. Giving her dog to her ex every so often. I didn't think much of it at the time because her dog was a nutcase and I was glad to have the dog out of the picture, but it meant the ex was still in the picture. Removing our relationship from social media because people don't need to know my personal business. My mom thinks we broke up. His mom hated me but didn't even have a Facebook. Blocking me on social media, but saying he deleted it, and then making a new Facebook account in which I was his only friend. Not meeting up with me around his friends anymore. Not being affectionate with me in public because he told his new side piece that we were just friends. He cheated on me several times with multiple girls before I gained some self-worth and left. New profile with one freaking friend. What a clown. I was super naive back then, but she would have quiet phone calls in the bathroom with the door locked. She would say that she didn't want to have sex, then I would hear her masturbating in bed that night. She kept going for sleepovers at her friend's house every other night because she was going through a rough time and many more smaller things. I was an idiot looking back, but it taught me a valuable lesson, so I don't regret it. She mentioned her ex too fondly one day, then changed her story a few days later on why she was going back to Boston, not actual city. That's all I had, but I felt suspicious. Split up that weekend even though she decided not to go. Her housemate tells me she was planning on fricking her ex that weekend. All it took was one sentence that sounded different from the rest. IDK. A lot of signs that are absolutely not subtle. When people are emotionally committed to another, the clues in front of you can be a hard pill to swallow, so we ignore it, and that sucks. Living in denial or depressedly convincing yourself that you probably deserve that treatment both can be easier than accepting the truth and or believing you deserve better. He tried to emotionally manipulate me into thinking I was the one doing something wrong. When I was like, hey, stop going out dancing with the same girl every Friday and spending the night at her house afterwards, he was like, why are you being so jealous and controlling? Then he broke up with me to date her, after trying to convince me I was unreasonable for suspecting it. It seems unreasonable to me to be okay with them going out even just once without you there, but I guess if it was going to happen, it would happen whether you were okay with that or not. Similar to many other answers in this thread, he was constantly overly suspicious of my actions. He berated me for saying one of my favorite rappers looked good on TV and criticized how much skin I was showing to go hang out with a male friend of mine who's openly gay. I still can't even fathom his level of insecurity. He would also constantly set his phone down facing down when around me. Not only was he cheating with multiple women, I also caught his sleazy butt looking at actual CP. Obviously horrified and disgusted, I publicly put him on blast for it. The kicker, all of our mutual friends, some of whom have kids, sided with him and stopped talking to me for ruining his life. I even posted the story on an old account and said friends of his somehow found the post. One of my easily identifiable tattoos was in my post history and started harassing me on here. He ruined his own life when he chose to look at cheese pizza. An ex of mine started to text a lot more than usual while we were together and locked his phone up tight and never let me have password. This was several years ago when passwords weren't as common. Also, we tended to always get into fights on Wednesdays or so. At the time, I didn't realize they were bogus. They were basically intentional so that he'd have Thursday and or Friday alone because of our fight. Took her phone into the bathroom 100% of the time. Slept with it under her pillow. Would put it away immediately if I walked behind her while she was sitting down. Spent more time than usual on phone when we were together. Whenever he changed his phone password, we lived together and he'd tell me his password to order food or whatever, and when he was freaking about he'd change it. Probably every 2 to 3 months he'd change his password. Once he realized I knew the current one, taking his phone with him everywhere. To the shower, taking he bins out, washing the dishes. Whenever his phone was glued to him, something was going on. Going to bed later than me. We'd usually get into bed and watch a film to fall asleep, but if something was going on I'd initiate going to bed and he'd find a reason to stay in the living room for longer. Going on lads nights out with his 2 male friends so that I wasn't invited, but finding out the next morning through social media that there were other girlfriends out with them and that the reason he didn't come home until 7/8 am was because he'd been to the strip club. The biggest subtle sign was pure gut instinct. This thread ain't going to be good for anyone's psyche. If you don't trust the woman you're with won't cheat on you, it's best to try to cultivate that level of trust in each other or find someone else if they're known to be the dishonest type. This probably isn't what folks want to hear, but you're likely to destroy your relationship if you start accusing your so of cheating or start to become overly conscious and critical of their actions. If they aren't cheating, you may just push them away or even cause them to cheat. The best thing to do is always speak to them honestly and hope they do the same. There we lot of little things. Locking her phone for the first time after 4 years of marriage. Taking 3-hour runs when she hadn't run since high school. Being furious with me because I interrupted her me time when I called her to say that I thought one of the kids had a concussion. But the one that made me go how did I not see it was when she would not stop talking about how awesome her friend's new husband was and then stopped talking about him overnight. My ex-so had an Apple Watch where he'd keep pictures of girls he went to school with, all skimpily clad. We had been dating a year when I first noticed that he'd actually made one of them the wallpaper on it. That's when I started getting suspicious, but I confronted him and he just said they were pretty girls from the internet. His sister and I were close friends, and so I'd told her about the girls on the watch, which she insisted on seeing. Now, at the time, he hadn't changed his password for a while, so I still knew it. Yes, he went from changing it once in the first year to changing it periodically every 3 months. Right. So, I show his sister the girls and she instantly recognizes them. Great. I then asked him who is name of girl who was one of the girls on there, which he had loads of pictures of. He said it was someone he went to school with. Well, that was the beginning. Then he started avidly doing neighborhood patrols as a volunteer, and one day I was feeling like something was up, and so I opened his computer, which was linked to security cameras so was always unlocked, and saw that his desktop WhatsApp was open. Scrolled through it not expecting much, but I saw he'd asked one of the girls from his watch if she wanted to meet him before he starts patrol. Isn't that what I'm there for? Amongst many other chats with him asking girls to meet him at the track or some other balls. I was didn't say anything though. I saw him as my investment. Never think you can change someone. Anyway, couple of other subtle things, like him constantly on his phone. No joke, hardly ever saw his whole face. Even watching TV or driving. It was terrible. Then I left him because I'd given up on this schmuck. Ironically, he begged for me back, had emotional breakdowns, had to see a shrink for a whole weekend session, and also stalked me very badly. 9 months later I see him at the restaurant next to my house, watching me and my dog. Fun times. He also stole my cat. They described having a dream of me being jealous of another guy, her ex, for no reason. Thought it was weird. Then when I found out she fricked him, well, it's obvious she was projecting some subconscious fear. Nothing too unusual when it comes to cheating, but basic gaslighting stuff. She starts acting suspicious as heck, staying up late at night to text random friends, putting passwords on shared email accounts, hiding her computer, and then blaming me for being jealous. She tried really hard to make me second guess what I instinctively knew was wrong. And I am sad to say it worked for a while. I was really messed up between what my gut was screaming at me, "This is fishy as heck. Don't let her just dismiss these things," and that guilty feeling she instilled about how I was just too jealous. Turned out my gut was right. She had been cheating for quite a while. But it's alright, I ended up with custody of the kids, the house and the car. She got a crappy apartment and her freedom. She still denies she did anything wrong. She was just following her heart. Follow your heart after you leave the relationship you are not happy in, not in the middle of it. He completely lost interest in the relationship and in the end he basically just acted like a roommate. He would always grab his phone really quick whenever he got a text and I was around. Just super distant and not really even talking. Boy bye. For some time now I've suspected that my girlfriend may be having an affair. You know the sort of thing. Her mobile rings. I answer. Someone hangs up. Recently she has started going out with the girls a lot and when I ask which girls it's always just some friends from work. You don't know them. I always used to keep an eye out for her taxi coming home but now she always walks up to the house although I can hear a car setting off as if she has just got out of one around the corner. The other day I picked up her mobile just to see what time it was and she went mental, screaming at me that I should never touch her phone again and why was I checking up on her. Anyway, I have never approached the subject with her. I kind of think deep down I don't really want to know the truth. But then last night she went out again and I decided that I would check up on her. I hid behind my car which I knew would give me a good view of the whole street so I could see which car she got out of on her return. It was whilst crouched behind my car that I noticed rust around my rear wheel arch. Should I take it into a body repair shop or should I buy some stuff from Napa and try to repair it myself? The most subtle. My ex had a cup in the bathroom where our toothbrushes would go. Every time I'd use it I'd put it back in the cup but every time I went to her place for the weekend, it would be in the very back of the drawer and hers was still in the cup. There were lots of other large signs but that was the most subtle. Always hiding his phone. I would catch him in a lie and he would make some bullshit excuse like oh I just know her from class. But I'd seen the way he talked to females via Twitter replies and things, so I knew. I wasn't dumb. I always had a gut feeling but didn't let myself believe it. She would talk about her friend but always made sure she mentioned how she didn't even like him and how annoying he was. At first I resented the other guy, then I realized that he was hearing the same stuff about me and couldn't do anything about it because he was in the Marines. She kept falling asleep while studying off campus at a friend's house. This friend wasn't in school at the time, but that was the explanation she gave when she kept not coming home at night. Yeah, I was an idiot and blindly in love. He started to treat me like crap, would be out a lot and not come home until late and would always accuse me of doing something wrong. Fast forward a few months, the woman he cheated on me with took all his stuff and sold it and then she was thrown in jail for a year for drug possession. Found out later he met the woman on Tinder. Go figure. Her phone lit up with a text message. I happened to glance over. Someone was telling her that he couldn't wait to tear her butt apart. On second thought, it wasn't so subtle. He had a sudden interest in keeping his phone away from me, and a lack of interest about what I was doing on mine. We were never one of those we share everything couples, but we never really hid things from each other either. I waited for him to fall asleep a few weeks later and unlocked his phone to find all the sexts between him and a girl he knew, who had actually added me online around the same time the affair started. I stupidly forgave him, and a couple years later we both had iPhones, and we were living together, and we had our locations visible to each other at all times. When he went out with his friends his phone would always die when he got to the club, and his other phone, he had a spare crappy one in case this exact thing happened, would always ring out and would be on silent. He had an evening job and when he came home late at night he would often wash everything he was wearing before even coming in the bedroom to say hi. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.